向環球時事之門，真正言論門常開。劉墉隨意門。
Now we're coming back. I just had the music as usual. Every quarter, no. So we have 3 pieces of music in the show. The one you've just heard is actually because we have a Brit today. So I have given you the music by Benjamin Britten, Simple Symphony. I don't want to go into details, but this is quite a sort of easy listening music by Benjamin Britten. He has quite a lot of difficult music that people don't want to listen to, but yeah, this is Benjamin Britten. Okay, now we go back to the film. Okay, now you said actually that you came to Hong Kong in 2003 and you moved by the whole thing and you wanted to make a documentary because you thought Hong Kong was very important.
Yeah.
But how did you come up with the idea of making a documentary about young kids, or what was your sort of the brainstorming process of what kind of topic you want to make about the social movement in Hong Kong?
Basically, I'd done my master's degree at Oxford on Hong Kong's post-97 political development, and I realised that probably no one was going to read that ever again. It was going to sit on a shelf in a library gathering dust.
Right.
And I just thought, I could continue with academia, but if no one reads it, then what's the point? And I'd got involved in working with another film, and I just felt that, yeah, I could do this because it sort of works with my skill set. But I came to Hong Kong with the idea originally of doing something sort of very kind of BBC-esque, interviewing the major people, Martin Lee, Tang Yot-sing, Emily Lau, and get their opinion on it and sort of tell the whole story, very sort of BBC-esque type thing. And then I guess as the summer progressed, this summer 2011, I realised that these people weren't massively interesting anymore and that they were kind of past their sell-by date. And so I started going to a lot of protests, and I realised, wow, these young kids who are doing these protests are dynamic, they're interesting, they're full of energy, and they've got personality, and that they're not so media sure, that they don't have a media personality where they put up a front, where a lot of politicians...
Yeah, 3 years ago only, but
yeah, 3 years ago.
It's very media
Well, I mean, I had a lot of, when I first met Joshua, he was just like a kid, and so it was no problem.
He was 15, right?
14.
14, yes, you're quite right.
And then, even as the film started progressing, I realised he started putting out the media. We started getting the media version of Joshua rather than the friend version of Joshua. And it took a long time to hold on a second, we're your mates. We've been hanging around you for the last year and a half. Don't give me the same spiel that you gave to the newspaper. But I got the idea for the 2 kids because they were just interesting. Film, when you go and watch a film, do you want to watch a load of talking heads talk for an hour and a half? No, that's radio. You want to see action. That's the grammar of film, action. So to see kids doing things and protesting and organising things and being dynamic, that's the way film works. So I didn't want to make one of my key things all the way through was don't make a boring documentary. Nobody wants to watch a boring documentary. It must be entertaining, it must have action, it must be, keep people interested the whole way through. So, this film is kind of not what many people think of as a documentary. I mean, documentary is a dirty word in Hong Kong because ATV and TVB broadcast very dull documentaries regularly. So we try to do something completely different.
Right.
And I tried to very much take my cues from narrative dramas or narrative action films rather than from traditional documentary. So it puts us in a difficult position because we're not really what people think of as a documentary, but at the same time we are still a documentary and not a fiction film. But hopefully it makes viewers come out and have an enjoyable experience, but also have something to think about.
But do you think it was a little bit fortunate because actually in your film that you focused the whole, you have the storyline of the whole film basically focusing on the national education sort of campaign and the whole thing. You didn't foresee that thing would come up, but it turned out to be that way. Actually.
Yeah, I mean it was very fortuitous. I mean, I knew when I picked Joshua that here was a kid who was going to do something.
Right, that's true.
That, you know, he was only 14, he spoke so eloquently, and he was so passionate that you knew that he was going to do something. I had no idea what, and we had no idea it was going to be this big. And likewise with Marjai, you know, here was someone so full of ideals, so willing to basically be persecuted and shunned from society, but wasn't going to change his ideals, that I felt that here was somebody who would be interesting. But you know, we didn't know national education was going to blow up.
Yeah.
Nobody did. So when we started making the film, we thought we were making a, you know, character portrait film. And in the end, sort of the issue took over. And I think when you're making a documentary, you have to stay, you know, you can have your ideas, but you have to stay kind of fluid, and you have to allow the film to tell itself. Don't put too many constraints on it. And we had a long, difficult editing process because we had ideas of what the film was going to be, but then really the film has to tell itself.
Right.
And, you know,
and you have so much footage that you have to choose from.
We had like 200 hours of footage,
right?
Which, you know, it took over a month just to watch it.
Yeah, but now because it was thanks to Matthew, he sent me like 2 tickets for the premiere of the film, and I told Matthew that actually I didn't have enough distance to comment on the film because actually quite not a lot, but a bit is about the Legislative Council election.
Yeah.
In particular, Hong Kong Island constituency, and I was one of the candidates of that election. And why did you want to sort of mix that into the film? Because actually, I was surprised. Actually, when I before watching the film, I thought it was about Joshua and Marjai, and well, definitely about national education. I knew that actually there would be some sort of feature on the election because it was actually it happened concurrently with the national education whole campaign, and but I didn't expect that actually you feature quite a lot of that. Why did you put that in?
Well, when I had the original idea back in March 2011, you know, what dawned on me was 2012 was going to be a big year.
Right.
You got chief executive election, and you got the legislative council election. And if you really think about it, that sort of 12-month period, there was going to be election committee election.
Oh yes, that's true.
Then the chief executive election, then the Legco election, and then the handover of power in China from Hu Jintao to Xi Jinping.
Yes.
So this is a major time of change. So my initial idea was, right, let's film from sort of the beginning of 2012 to the Legislative Council election, and at the very end we'll have an epilogue with the changeover of power in China. So it was always sort of, I think, you know, with documentary you kind of have to have some kind of limit, some kind of time frame, because people say to me now, oh, you know, why didn't you include this, or why didn't you include that, or why is Occupy Central not in it? So, well, you know, at some point I've got to stop filming and start editing and start putting a film together. Otherwise, you know, it's no longer a documentary, it's just real-time news.
Right, yeah.
So a documentary has to have a beginning and an end point. So we ended up sort of beginning of 2012, although we shot a lot of stuff in 2011, and then ending the Legco elections. But I think the Legco elections, you know, they were important because was Joshua's national education campaign going to affect the outcome of the Legislative Council election? I mean, in the end, I think that the United Front work, the liaison office coordinating with FUT and FTU and DAB meant that, you know, it had limited effect, but it just seemed like that this was an important election that was happening, and I also wanted to try and show that Hong Kong has elections, but
but not a real one.
Well, they're basically a sham, because only when half the seats are elected properly, then it makes a little difference. And it just felt that, you know, also this was a crossover between Joshua and Marjai. Marjai was involved in someone's political campaign
Of LSD?
Yeah, on Hong Kong Island, and Joshua and a lot of Joshua's helpers were both kind of connected. So it seemed like there was that bridge there between it.
Right. Now, you talk about actually there are two characters in the film, two protagonists. Is that the word?
Well, three protagonists.
Three protagonists.
Joshua, Marjai, and C.Y. Lung.
C.Y. Lung? Oh, yes.
You've got to have a good baddie.
No, C.Y. is the antagonist.
Yeah, antagonist.
Never mind, yeah. But the two major good guys there, actually. So what kind of contrast do you want to make, actually? Because apparently in the film you want to make some contrast between the two.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really a compare; it was more a contrast. When I first picked them, the reason why I picked these two kids, they stood out to me, but other kids stood out to me as well. But the reason why I picked these ones was when I met Marjai, he was possibly the most radical kid. He was 17 at the time. He was a radical Marxist anarchist,
and throw things and
throwing, not just like rice or bananas, but Molotov cocktails, and really he advocated lots of things that are not only extreme in Hong Kong but also extreme in UK. So I thought, oh wow, he'll be interesting,
right.
Because these are not common views in Hong Kong. And then Joshua, he was interesting, obviously, but he was so moderate. And I just thought, gosh, right, we've got these two kids. They come from very similar background, same. They grew up in the same neighbourhood in Ap Lei Chow. They went to the same school.
They both grew up in South Horizons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
South Horizons. They both grew up in South Horizons. They both went to the same primary and secondary schools. Mm-hmm. They both had parents heavily involved in the church. So these kids on paper look very similar, and yet they're chalk and cheese. Or their personalities are so different.
Right.
And they have the same goal. A more democratic Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But they choose completely different paths to achieve that goal. So I thought that would be interesting, and that was really why I picked them.
Mm-hmm. So after the final product of the film, are you satisfied with this kind of contrast, or you would have made more sort of adjustments to the film? Or
I think. There are things I would have liked. There are lots of scenes I would like to include. I would like to include it in the film that we should cut for running time. The film is already 100 minutes. It's kind of long for a documentary. But I felt like there was. If we cut anything more out of it, then no one would understand stuff. So there are scenes I would like to have included that we didn't. And the national education thing became like this kind of mammoth story, which felt like we could not include that.
Yes.
So a lot of sort of the two kids talking about their political beliefs, or why they had arrived at those things, ended up on a cutting room floor. But I hope when we have the DVD out that all of those things will be in deleted scenes and people will be able to explore more. And I want to try and do a book that goes along with it, with various writings from activists to academics to social commentators, to try and give people much more background and understanding. So
have you been making the director's cut of the film? Not yet.
No, I'm not going to make a director's cut. I'm just going to include deleted scenes for people to explore.
Okay. I thought you're going to make a director's cut to add like another 50 minutes of the film.
No, it's not going to be like Apocalypse Now Redux.
Okay.
It's okay.
So when will the DVD be ready? Or not
towards the end of the year. I expect sort of November, December.
Okay.
But I mean, we're a small team, and we're trying to take the film to Taiwan next, and then we're going to North America, Canada, and the US.
Okay, you're going to do a world tour kind of stuff.
I think this film is important. I think people around the world need to see it, and I know that we have people in Canada and the US and Australia writing to us saying, we want to see this film, where can we see it?
I think Taiwan as well, actually, recent events in Taipei. I mean, they might sort of strike something.
I hope so. I think, if you look at, Hong Kong can look at Macau to see where it's heading if it's not careful. Taiwan can look at Hong Kong and see where it's heading if it's not careful. Because it doesn't really matter if Beijing is the sovereign power or not. It can use its economic might to swamp you and control you, which is really what's happening in Hong Kong. All the tycoons have cozied up with Beijing because they want to make money. Morals have gone out the window, and that could easily happen in Taiwan too.
Okay, let's have a break. We come back after the break. We'll talk about politics in Hong Kong. I mean, starting from the film and what's Matthew's thinking about boring politics in Hong Kong and what we're heading actually.
仲去大型補習社上堂，萬人之師教嘅嘢，等於萬幾人都識，仲點算係出眾嘅技巧啊？ 中文名師趙善軒博士創辦嘅趙博教室，提供中小學各科小組指導。教學點位於元朗、太子、荃灣、炮台山。詳情可上趙善軒博士 Facebook 專頁或電34285444查詢。